should get him here for a speaker. Well, thanks to you, Mike, we have got him here today. And Chris has got his own surveying company in Westport called, where is it? Chris Coll Surveying Limited. And Laura works in the firm with him. So well done, Laura, working with Dad. It must be pretty exciting. Yeah, and his wife Jan, it's been a pleasure dealing with her too. Just a thrill to talk to her on the phone. It's a pity she can't be with us today, but she's not well, so luckily we get you, Laura, instead. Great. Chris will talk about recoveries in the Buller River and local coastal areas and the recent flooding. I hope you know about that, Chris. Included in his talk will be about some prominent and noteworthy rescues, recovery missions that he's been involved with over the years. So please welcome Chris, a true coaster. You should get him here for a speaker. Well, thanks to you, Mike, we have got him here today. And Chris has got his own surveying company in Westport called, where is it? Chris Coll Surveying Limited. And Laura works in the firm with him. So well done, Laura, working with Dad. It must be pretty exciting. Yeah, and his wife Jan, it's been a pleasure dealing with her too. Just a thrill to talk to her on the phone. It's a pity she can't be with us today, but she's not well, so luckily we get you, Laura, instead. Great. Chris will talk about recoveries in the Buller River and local coastal areas and the recent flooding. I hope you know about that, Chris. Included in his talk will be about some prominent and noteworthy rescues, recovery missions that he's been involved with over the years. So please welcome Chris, a true coaster.
Thanks everybody, it's nice to be amongst friends and listening to the exploits of Dave McKenzie, because they used to run up, he and Eddie Gray used to run up Mount Street where we lived virtually every day when he worked at the Greymouth Star. And I remember on that Boston Marathon, the first prize that Dave got was a pair of running shoes, and then a couple of years later when Dee Costello won it, the first prize for winning the Boston Marathon was a Mercedes-Benz. So, wow, Dave, it's just a little bit, not very good timing, you know, but it's still just as hard. Anyway, thank you Murray and Mike for this invitation. They wanted me to originally talk about Pike River and the recovery that's going on there, but we're the surveyors for it, and it's we have a confidentiality agreement that I can't talk about it, so I thought, what about the origins of the birth of surf rescue in the Buller area? Be a lot more interesting, a lot more fun. So we now start off with how surf rescue originated on the coast, surf rescue rather than the surf club, and in particular the birth and origins of it. We go back to 1983 when a fishing boat called the Jan overturned on the Westport Bar, and at this stage we didn't know very much about it, but we were a bit interested in it because I was a local diver, and we were interested in it because the Jan was also the same name as my wife's Jan, but nothing more significant than that. Anyway, on Saturday afternoon while we were at a working bee out at the Aero Club, because I had a private pilot's licence, the missing skipper's partner and a bloke called Dave Lucas, who was a local fisherman, asked to hire a plane and have a look, because the Jan was overdue by about 24 hours at that stage, and he had a feeling that they weren't quite looking in the right place. They were running a Friendship, Air Force had a Friendship in those days rather than the Orions, and they were doing a search sort of closer along the coastline because a bit of debris had washed up that they recognised came from the Jan. And he said he thought they should have been looking a little bit further out to sea, because when they'd lost stuff off boats, the current from the Buller seemed to kick stuff further out to sea. So we took off and travelled along about 2, maybe 3k offshore following the sort of foam line created by the Buller River, and within about 5 or 6k we saw some debris in the water. We flew down, had a little closer look to it, and Dave reckoned that looked like stuff that he recognised off the Jan. So we kept trundling along, and a bit further on, more debris, and then definitely some buoys that would come off the Jan. You could see the writing on the buoys. And so we just, the debris line got more and more pronounced, and more debris in the flotsam and jetsam. And then before long we came to a boat that was turned upside down, and it was the local fishing boat, the Jan. On the boat that stood up, and it was the skipper of the boat. We didn't know at that stage it was him. And he waved to us, and we circled it around, and we thought, wow, that's going to be one out of the box. We've got one person back, that's great. So we called up the Friendship, which was still flying along close to the coastline, and said, we need you to come out here and circle it while we shot back into town and got a helicopter to drop us on the boat. So after rushing back to grab their rescue gear, Tim Taylor, a local cop who I dive with a lot, and I headed out back by our helicopter, and were able to go directly to the wreck thanks to flares and a life buoy that dropped right by the boat, by the Friendship. The helicopter dropped me onto the hull, and I was able to swim over to it and climb up onto it and talk to Reg. And he said, thank God you arrived. He was pretty weak, because this is getting close to about, it had gone over on the Friday night, and this was more like about 3 o'clock on the following Saturday. And he said, I've been talking to my mate and telling me you're coming. Okay, here, Rich. And I thought he might have been hallucinating, because I couldn't see anybody looking around on the top of the boat. And he said, he's inside. And this is now gone from a fairly simple, straightforward rescue to getting highly complicated, because at this stage, this was about 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon. It was the time of the year, it was May, so daylight was going to run out about 5:30ish. The sea was pretty rough, and we had no comms to be able to call up the Friendship. So meanwhile, the helicopter got back, and Reg was too weak to get straight into the helicopter. He tried to land, put the skid right down on top of the hull, but he was just too weak and trembly to get in. So we waved him away, and he shot straight back at the helicopter, shot straight back into the Mokanui, mouth of the Mokanui River by Setonville. And meanwhile, we'd got a basket sort of net thing driven out from Westport. And he flew that out, and I was able to lift Reg up and toss him into the net, and then off they went back. And while he was away, I tapped on the hull, and sure enough, the bloke inside, John Hutley, was talking back to me and said, "Come on, where are you? Where are you?" And I said, "We'll be back. We'll be back." But he had no idea inside that it was what time of day or dark it was. So as far as he was concerned, it was probably even the same day. When the helicopter came out and I hopped in the net or the netting basket underneath, and he took me straight back into the Mokanui, we had to, it landed me on the beach, and I hopped up inside the helicopter. The helicopter pilot didn't know that I'd been talking to the guy trapped inside, and I said, for God's sake, don't let that Friendship go yet. It's the only thing that we can pinpoint the hull with. And meanwhile, everybody on shore was sort of winding down, and job well done. 1 out of 2 is pretty good. And we said, no, that's only the start of it. So we raced back out. They called up the Friendship, and it went out, and everything was starting to get really ramped up at that stage, because the helicopter the Friendship was starting to run out of gas. It had been going for most of the day, and so it could only circle for so long. So we phoned through to the Westport port, and fortunately in town there was a thing called a shark cat. It was a very high-speed catamaran fishing boat, and once he had the word, they shot straight out over the bar, and then 20 minutes they were able to get to the wreck while it was still just on daylight. At this stage, it was Tim and I were thinking, how are we going to do this? And we said, well, we'll go out and we'll have a little look underneath and see if we can maybe see where he is. As we went out, the shark cat was out there tethered to the boat waiting, and Dave Lucas, the same bloke who had flown out earlier in the day, said, I'll take you out on our fishing boat, but it's just a normal fishing boat, which does about flat tacked about 18 knots. And he was able to take us with all our dive gear out to it, but by the time we got there it was about 10 o'clock at night, and we climbed onto meanwhile the shark cat had tied the rubber buoy that the Friendship had dropped into the water, and we were able to use that like a dive tender, and we put all our gear on that, and then with torches and knives and things, we went underneath the jam, and so there's the picture I'll just show. That's the jam, and it took us a wee while to work out where the cab was, where the cockpit was, but didn't realise that it had actually been smashed off by the wave, and all those ropes and things were hanging down underneath, and we had to cut them all away, and we hadn't heard any noise from John inside, and we were thinking the worst, and I was able to, in through that little wee slot up in the front of the cockpit there, was enough room to slide sideways, and then I found the ladder down into the front part of the hull, went underneath, and then popped up inside, and there was an air pocket inside. I looked around, and there was nobody, couldn't see anybody there, and we were thinking the worst. And I saw it looked like a bag, sort of a sleeping bag thing, stretched between upside down bunks. Somebody had looked like they found some planks and put the sleeping bag on, and I poked at this sleeping bag, and this voice says, "Let there be light." I just had to shit myself, and it was John, and we found out afterwards he was a diabetic, and he'd been drifting in and out of sort of either for the diesel fumes or the diabetes, I'm not sure, and he didn't realise that he'd been there at that stage almost 30 hours. He thought he'd been there 3 hours. So he said, "Get me out of here." And I said, "Well, we have to," because he said, when the boat turned over, the life jackets inside the front part of the cockpit had floated free, and they had little saltwater batteries on them, and he was actually able to get enough light to find a couple of planks to make a makeshift platform for him to get up on, and he saw the sleeping bag floating around in the water, unfurled it, and it had actually been relatively comfortable and not hypothermic at all. He was an amazing survivor type, and I said, "Well, I'll go back out and we'll get some help." And he said, "Don't be too long, because I've been watching with the little light. I could see the water level gradually creeping up the ladder the ladder down into the bunk room. So the boat's gradually sinking." Oh, okay. So he said, "What are we going to do?" And I said, "Well, I've got plenty of air here." So we took my regulator out, and we pumped just free floats of air into the cockpit, and you could actually see the water level starting to go down. We thought, well, that's bought us a bit of time. So I said, "Well, I have to go out, and I'll get Tim, and we'll work out a way of getting you out." Well, I got back out. Tim was just about frantic at the stage. He was outside. I'd been gone for quite a while at that stage, and he said, "What's happening? What's happening?" And I said, "He's alive, and he's pretty good." And Tim said, "Well, they've called in the police dive squad, and we're not allowed to do anything until they get here, because with two of us doing it, it's going to be, we could lose them." It's just too risky. So the police dive squad, meanwhile, had been actioned from Wellington, and it was all frantic at that stage. They flew them down in the middle of the night, and the Westport, of course, didn't have a lighted runway, so they got. You wouldn't be able to do it these days. They got cars lined up and down the side of the runway, shining lights on the runway, and this Cessna came barreling in. All they had was basic dive gear. The plane was overloaded anyway with these 4 divers and minimal gear. They couldn't bring tanks because they would have overloaded the aircraft. So meanwhile, the rest of the dive club was frantically racing around town, getting extra tanks, pumping up the air bottles flat out, and they dropped them straight into the Kawatiri dredge and steamed out. Meanwhile, this is all going on. I didn't realise this. Frantically heading out to this boat that was about 30-40 k from Westport. So everything was just taking so much time, and we didn't know how much time we had left. By the time they arrived, Tim and I had gone back down and hacked off a lot more stuff, so that we had a pretty free run straight into the bunk room. And the police came in and said, well, what's the guts? And we said, well, we explained where we were. They said, right, this is what we'll do. And the lead police diver said, we'll go in, we'll give him a quick 101 lesson on how to breathe through a regulator, and we'll give him his first dive lesson. So they said, right, we'll get all lined up and one after the other, and we'll hand him from one to the other. Because we won't put flippers or anything on him, we'll just get him so that he can breathe through a regulator and look out through a mask. Right, so we lined up, away we went, 1, 2, away we went, and then out he came, and as he's coming out, as he went past me, I noticed his regulator had come out of his mouth, and his eyes, I could still see his eyes, they were sticking out like testes canis, and as he hit the surface, he started to slip under the water. I grabbed him and hauled him up, and all that came up was his jersey, and oh God, we're going to lose him. And then this clawing action, he came up the water, and we just grabbed him, and two of us just heaved him into the little rubber boat, the little one that we had tied on the side of the jan. And he said, oh, thank God for that. And he said, we called Dave Lucas over, and we thought, now we've got to try and lift him up and into the boat. And all of a sudden, an unexpected burst of energy leapt up out of the boat, ran straight across the rubber boat, one bound and straight into the fishing boat on the side. The cops, in the meantime, came tearing out of the hull. We've lost him. Where is he? Too late, mate. He's already home and dry. He's up there. Wow. This is one of these ones that might work out. So we cut the boat free, backed off, and then John said, they want you to go off on the dredge and go back on the dredge because there's a doctor on the dredge that want to give you a diabetes shot, an insulin shot. And he said, I'm not getting out of this thing, I'm here, I'm staying here. So, right, we called them up and said, no, he's coming back with us. And back we went, and when we got home, the reason why, when he came out of he was coming out of the hull and the regulator had fallen out of his mouth, he said he had false teeth. And when he was under there, he got all diesel in his mouth, and he couldn't stand the taste of diesel in his mouth, so he spat his teeth out, and he couldn't hold the regulator in his mouth. So when it came out, oh God, yeah. Well, there's a sequel to this. When we got back home, and everybody's home and dried, happy as. Yeah. Oh yeah, this is roughly where the boat flipped was on the mouth of the Buller River, and then it went up to the Mokanui, and then about 2 days later, it ended up floating up at Nokawa, and that's where the boat ended up, and that's that other that photo we saw with the cockpit sheared off. Well, we were invited to a hangi sometime later. That's John, and we added it up in the end. It was about 40 to 46 hours between when the boat flipped and when he was finally on Dave Lucas' boat heading for home. And we were invited to a hangi afterwards, and and it was all, you know, it was an amazing outcome. We thought, how can two people come back from something like that? Because John reckoned the wave was about 50 foot wide, 50 foot high that flipped the boat, but even allowed for a bit of exaggeration, it would have been a pretty good one, 30 foot anyway. I see he was, you know, we're having a bit of talk there, and I said, a great big grin on his face, and he had some teeth, and I said, did you have a second set of teeth? He says, you wouldn't read about it. When that boat was washed up on shore, they climbed inside the boat, had a look inside, bugger me, up in the top of the boat is a pair of bloody teeth, a set of teeth. And I got the back, washed them off, good as gold. They were definitely my teeth, because they still fit. Oh, wow, that was pretty, what a great way to finish, you know. Like, it was almost like a fairy tale. So, that was a little while later. Tim and I got presented with with a medallion from the Humane Society, and you'll recognise the guy on the left-hand side there, a younger version of the Pat O'Day that we know and love, and that was when he was mayor in those days, and Pat was just so proud of being able to do something like that, and it was just one of those experiences that, as long as you live, you'll never see another one like it. It was just a great experience.